Tactical Team.
Hey there, this is Malorian, this is the Orc Tactical Team, and this is a subject I can't believe I haven't covered yet because it's such a near and dear, close one to my heart, and such an obvious one to do. We are going to take Savage Orc Biggins, and we're going to compare them to the new Witch Elves from the new Dark Elf book. Why is this an obvious comparison? Because they're both 11 points, and they both are there for the same type of idea. So it's a pretty straight across comparison. I know for the most part you shouldn't really do this comparing one book to another because the points, can be depending on what else that book has to offer it. But you know what? Let's do it. So we have these two units. We have our Savage Orc Biggins, 11 points. They're going to have, the 3 attacks, strength 5, weapon skill 4. And then you're going to have your Witch Elves with the 3 attacks, weapon skill 4. Both are naked, and let's start doing some comparisons. So, stat-wise, the first thing to go and look across is the speed. And you have to kind of look at the whole idea that the Witch Elves are faster. They're movement 5, Savages are movement 4. And when you have a unit like this, which is designed to get in there and kill stuff, speed is a really big deal. So that's a little ding on the side of the Witch Elves. Now, the next one to look at, too, is actually the real base size. That kind of deals with speed, it goes with effectiveness. But the fact that Witch Elves are on a 20 mil as opposed to a 25 mil means that not only can they go and focus more attacks in a smaller frontage, but it also means that a horde of witches will have an easier time maneuvering around the battlefield as opposed to the Savage Orcs. So again, kind of another ding there on the Witch Elves. Now, why don't we look at their damage output? Well, at that point, they're kind of on different wavelengths. If we're looking at the Witch Elves, like I said, they both have 3 attacks. Now, the Witch Elves, they have always strike first, which can be a really big deal. Even if there's enough models where striking first isn't a big deal, the whole idea that you're getting to re-roll the hit can be massive, especially too when you take into account that they have poison. So the more times you're re-rolling your hits, the more poisons you're going to get. The real killer, strength 3. They get to re-roll their 1s. We're going to be talking about the Cauldron later. But at the same time, you then have the Savage Orc Biggins there, which are strength 5, and they're just going to go, brah, I don't care about re-rolls because I'm going to wound a lot of stuff on 2s. Now, again, it really depends what the situation is and what's going to be better where when you do the math. But for the most part, if it's something that is high armor, you want to go with Savage Orc Biggins because they're going to actually go and reduce that armor. If it's something that has really high toughness, say if you're fighting something like, I don't know, a Sphinx, right? Well, clearly then you want to go with this thing that has the poison. So once you really hit that toughness 6 or higher, you really like that poison. Otherwise, for the vast majority of times, you know what? I'd say that things are pretty much even across the board there. Because, you got the one that's re-rolling the hit, re-rolling the wound, and then the other one that's just going to be mainly wounding on 2s. So, pretty much the same there. Then we come to defense. Now, the Witch Elves don't really have much going for them. They have toughness 3, and they're naked. That's it. They're even, at this point here, the smaller base size actually hurts them because different things that have templates will hit more of them. So that's kind of bad. Meanwhile, on the Savage Orc side, they're going to have toughness 4, and they also come built in with a standard little 6+ ward save. We'll get to the Shrunken Head later. So, when you look at defense-wise, finally, we actually have a ding on the Savage Orc side. Now, something you really have to look at is some of the minor things as well. Those Witch Elves, they can actually take a magic banner. Meanwhile, the Savage Orc Biggins, they can't take a banner. So, magical banner. So, all of a sudden, you can have extra things going in there, depending on the situation. So, I mean, really, maybe those Witch Elves could be speed 6, because they have the banner of swiftness. Maybe they're going to be having flaming attacks, whatever it is. That whole little ability to take a magic banner, again, another little ding there. It's not like a huge thing, but that's definitely an advantage. Now, the next thing probably to look at is the whole idea of, well, okay, it's great to have this tool, but who can use the tool the best? Who can really get the most from it? Well, let's start with the Savage Orc Biggins. The Savage Orc Biggins, don't have a lot of support. You can have in there the guy, the shaman. They have the shrunken head. They can have a 5+ ward. That's fantastic. At the same time, you have here we go. So you can have rerolls to hit, and then all of a sudden that kind of evens out with their rerolls hit with always strike first. But for the most part, that's all you really have. I mean, you can throw some characters in there and do stuff like that, but really, because they're stuck with either the big wah or the little wah, there's not a lot else that they have going for that there. Meanwhile, if we're looking at the Dark Elves, they can support these guys like crazy. They have access to all the lores. We could be looking at Wild Form. We could be looking at Soul Blight going the other way. We could be looking at Mind Razor. So for magical support, crazy insane what you can actually be doing to get these Witch Elves even better. And this is why we can now start talking about where the Savage Orc begins. They had that Shaman that could take the Shrunken Head and make them better that way. On the other side, they're going to have their Hag, and the Hag that can be taking the Cauldron. Now, the Hag on itself, of course, could be making it so that they're going to be having not just not just 3 attacks, they're going to be having 4 attacks. And that's a pretty big deal, right? All of a sudden, on that whole horde, we're having 10 extra attacks. And that can be a really big deal. The second thing is if this is part of a Cauldron, that Cauldron all of a sudden is making it so they're going to be re-rolling all 2 wounds and not just the rolls of 1. So you don't even need now to be really boosting up their strength. They're going to be getting a lot of re-rolls there and doing lots of damage anyway. So really, for as far as who you can really support, man, you know what I talked about, like the one before is like a small little bonus for the banner? This is a ding, 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 because you can support these guys for days and do so much for them. Now, there's something else we have to look at too, and that is how does the army composition really go and support this type of unit? And really, when it comes down to it, one of the things you have to really worry about is that this is a unit that has frenzy. You have to always worry about failing that leadership, having to charge out, or being baited and somebody going in front of you. You have to fight them, and then you're forced to overrun. And I mean, I don't care if you're Savage Orc Biggins or Witches or whatever. If you get flank charged, you are in big trouble. And unless you really crank those dice, at the very least, you're going to be losing frenzy, and at the very worst, you're going to be losing the entire block. So, really bad. Now, for the Orcs and Goblins, they actually do very well for being able to control this. You have a lot of small little throwaway units you can put out there. And you also have things like, just simple like the Mangler Squig, right? This is something I didn't really appreciate till lately that, you know, I used to hate the Mangler Squig. Because you know what? Why take a Mangler Squig? It's just going to hop up, they're going to throw some dogs or an eagle onto it, and then, oh, look, now it's gone. Well, really what that does for you is instead of that eagle or dogs redirecting your Savage Orcs, you're basically trading that away and getting rid of it. So that's really great. So between having more units there to kind of support it, you also have things like the Mangler that will eliminate the things on the other side, or Fanatics and stuff like that. I mean, sure, both sides can try and take out these things, say, with like shooting or magic. I would say their shooting is about equal, although really when it comes down to it, Orcs and Goblins shooting is even better when you're looking at Doom Divers and stuff. So if you're trying to get rid of those throwaways, you know, you almost got to really give this to the Orcs and Goblins, because sure, you know, Archers and other stuff is about the same, but then you take these guys, and these Doom Divers, okay, where are you hiding that fast cap? Yeah, it's dead. So that's definitely a very big thing going in their favor, but trying to really use that unit to the best of their ability. Meanwhile, on the Witch Elves, they have some real issues. To begin with, that whole frenzy thing is made worse by the fact that if you take that Hag and go with that Brood that gives you the extra attack, your frenzy tests are at -3. 3. So all of a sudden it's like, okay, I don't want to charge this because then I'll overrun and it'll flank me. So I'll pass the leadership, stay, kill it, and move on next turn. Oh, failed my test. I'm charging it anyway. That is a really big risk. Another thing, too, is a big thing that's actually going and supporting them is also something like that Altar of Cain. Now, whereas the Shaman inside that unit can actually be very safe. Between him actually not being able to be picked out by stuff, he might have the fencer blades, who knows, he's pretty damn safe on the corner of that unit. Meanwhile, this altar of Cain is kind of just standing right out there. And especially if you put your character on top of that and don't have an extra one or something, yeah, they can be in for some bad times. Because if cannons come through, they can pick that thing off. They can kill your character, so you're losing that benefit anyway. And really, whereas that synergy for the Orcs and Goblins, even though it was weak, you can't really eliminate it very well. On the Dark Elf side, it is a real risk where this thing can go down. And all of a sudden, if you, let's say you have this perfect shot, right? The cannon goes through and destroys a Death Hag and destroys a Cauldron. Well, all of a sudden, you're going to be losing those extra attacks going across. You're not going to be re-rolling all your 2 wounds, just the 1. And that Cauldron also gave you a ward save. That's gone now too. So that's a real risk. Another thing too is, like I was saying for the Orcs and Goblins, they have all these small units. And the great thing about Orcs and Goblins is you normally have a lot of drops. So you have a lot of things going on. Dark Elves are very elite. And for their part there, you know, they won't have that much to support it. Especially if you have that Witch Elf Horde that has, you know, the altar and the hag. And who knows what other little elite thing you're going with. You know, you don't normally see lots of drops going on for your Dark Elves. You know, sure, you might now have these new fast riders going around casting magic and stuff. But, you know, those are probably going to be pretty useful, and I don't know if you really want to be throwing those away and stuff like that. So the whole idea of being able to control that unit and make sure it's not being baited away, very, very difficult for the Dark Elves. So really, when it comes down to it, you start seeing that when we were looking at those 2 comparisons, the Witch Elves can be extremely powerful. And you can even take this farther, right? Because, I mean, like I said, for the Savages, you can go and add in whatever characters you want. I'm sorry, Halbrand trumps you all, because whoever the hell you are, Halbrand is just going to kill you like nothing. The problem is all the points. But before we get to that part, you know, you have your Savage Archbiggins, which are a simple thing you put in there, and you have a lot of other stuff to support them. You have your Mangler Spigs, you have your Doom Divers. You can do a pretty good job of clearing a path, or even Fanatics. One of the things I always love seeing is I'll put my Night Goblins by my Savages. They'll run in something to block me. Fanatics go out, eliminated. It was like it never even happened. So they really have those tools. The Witch Elves, because they're so elite, they don't. And it's such a pity because they can make them so strong. So let's kind of cut the bull, get to the very end. Which one do I see is actually going to be the most competitive? I think if you have equally skilled players going to a tournament, you are going to get more out of the Savage Archbiggins than you will, again, than with the Witch Elves. And the reason for this is that, sure, if you're going to some other tournaments and you're catching people that don't know how to redirect them, do not understand all the synergies, man, those Witch Elves are just going to walk through the army like they're nothing. And I mean, the same thing can be said kind of like with the Savages as well. When I play against people that don't really know about 50 strength 5 attacks, yeah, they just kind of die. But once you start getting to that level where people have their full tool list, they know your strengths, they know your weaknesses, it is a lot harder to deal with that equal skill to stop the Savage Archbiggins than it is to stop those witches. So that's what it really comes down to. Whether you agree or disagree, I would love to hear your comments below. And there you have it. Thanks for watching. Bye.